Hello, world. Today I will be reacting once again to the content of Heavyweights Light Feels in his video that he made called Inflation is Oppression. I am mentioned, and whenever I am mentioned in his content, your content, I try to react to it because it is, as we will see, essentially the only way for me to communicate with you. So when you mention me in your content, I try to react to it. And I will say that it is commendable because you put out so much content that I would legitimately like to interact with. But as we will see once again, this really is sort of the only way for me to communicate with you. So I will be reacting to your Inflation is Oppression video today. So let's get started with that.
What's good? What's good? I just got a really good Spark order that I got to pick up in 15 minutes. I hope I didn't get tip baited, but it's 20 bucks in tips between two deliveries for 8 miles. Heck yes, I'll do that. Anyways, tip baiting means people will say they'll give you a tip, but when the order's done, they don't actually give you the tip. People do that. People are shitty. Anyway, let's focus on the video. Inflating a currency is to oppress a people. To inflate a currency is to oppress a people. Because you are essentially taking away from them. That is the very simple way of saying that. You are taking away from what they originally had. So let's say they had 100 grand, right? And then you inflate the currency to the point where that 100 grand is no longer worth what it used to be. It now takes $125,000 to buy the equivalent items or goods. So you're taking away somebody's ability to provide for themselves and to interact with material reality.
And up to this point, it's pretty hard to disagree with him. He's done a pretty good job of explaining what inflation is. I generally like to think of it in like smaller terms, like for example, if you go to the store and buy a gallon of milk and that gallon of milk is $2, and then you go to the store the next day and buy another gallon of milk for $2.50, that is inflation. Your dollar is now worth less on the market. And so when a government or state or institution, manufactures inflation, that can definitely be oppressive.
And the more this happens, the more inflated a currency becomes, and the more it becomes devalued, the worse the problem gets. And so we're like at the beginning of the exponential curve point. In the next 10 to 20 years, the dollar is going to be essentially worthless. And it's wild to say that, like, because most people are still going about their day-to-day lives. They don't fully understand the collapse that is coming. They do not understand the spiritual war that is happening. They do not understand the shifts that are going to occur. And so while we talk about it today, I did just say in the next 10 to 20 years, we're at the beginning of that exponential spike upward.
And so this is, where he kind of starts to lose me. He doesn't really explain what uh is going to replace the dollar if it collapses. And he sort of, as we will see, tries to do that, but really it's not a very solid answer to what would really happen if the dollar collapsed and there was some sort of replacement currency behind it. Uh, there is an entire section in The Great Reset written by Charles Schwab about what would happen if the dollar collapsed and how that would actually look realistically.
Buy Bitcoin, obviously, gold and silver, physical, tangible assets, things known as precious metals. I think those are going to bridge us to the next iteration of currency, whatever we do. Bartering is going to be huge. I think that's going to be huge moving forward as well. But we still will want a store of value. Gold and precious metals are great because they actually have purpose. That's what makes them valuable, not just because they're shiny, but because they have purpose.
And yeah, so their purpose is, like he mentioned previously, the fact that they are tangible resources. The idea of having a currency backed by that, is generally a good idea. And also the idea of bartering being more predominant is something I like, but actually is also happening. Like when we trade our soy, the soy that we grow to China for their cheap steel, that is not entirely a financially backed transaction. A lot of barter is taking place between nation states, and we hopefully will see that increase.
So, anyways, men, we rarely ever go a week without thinking about the Roman Empire and what was one of the significant contributing factors to the downfall of the Roman Empire: greed, corruption, etc. But they clipped their coins. That's how they devalued their currency, or that's how they created inflation. They literally started taking, pieces off of their coins and making them smaller, quite literally. And
And so this is great. I cover what is actually called debasement because they clipped off the bottoms, the base of these coins. Uh, in Roman society at when they were experiencing their civilizational collapse. I This is one of my favorite things that I cover in my classes, and just another area of agreement where uh once again, like, it's literally the Roman government causing inflation by debasing their coins. So yeah, once again, that is pretty oppressive. I'm in total agreement here.
it has the same effect as when our central banks print a whole bunch of money. Even they don't print it mostly anymore. They still print some, but a lot of it's just digital dollars, just ones and zeros. It's so fake, so fake. It used to be somewhat real when it was backed by gold, but at this point, the only thing keeping the dollar afloat essentially is the fact that we continue to agree to be wage slaves to the fascist corporate state known as the United States of America, which is just a branch of the Bank of England and the ruling globalist elites that I always talk about.
And so that is just like a fire hose of conspiracy there to unpack. And really, central banks do print money. It's the Federal Reserve that is in charge of that, as well as setting interest rates for auto and home loans. That is what the Federal Reserve does, and those are actually really important things. Once again, the idea that they can print money and set the interest rates on auto and home loans. So the Federal Reserve is actually, a lot more powerful than the Bank of England, which is like, for some reason, a topic of conspiracy here, that is supposed to go into the global banking conspiracy, but unfortunately, when it comes to the Bank of England, it's like it has a smaller GDP than like the state of California. And like the Swiss banks are more powerful than the Bank of England. The Federal Reserve is more powerful than the Bank of England. And all of this is in fact kept afloat by the fact that the US dollar, which once again is set by the Federal Reserve, is the reserve currency of the global economy that all of these central banks are a part of. So it's really not like this nefarious conspiracy. It's all, pretty much out in the open.
So it's a huge web of funnel, but if you follow up the funnel, you essentially get to the global elite bankers, and they're the ones who are pulling the strings. They hire the social engineers, they buy the politicians, they get blackmail on the powerful people in the world so they can manipulate them. This is not like to the average awakened person, that's not news. But I'm trying to reach the non-awakened people. And I'm trying to do so with real life examples and with real life information. Inflation is rampant right now. The dollar is.
So you'll be glad to know, Andrew, that inflation actually, in the month of June, was actually down. We experienced, negative inflation, or what, deflation. So inflation, while it was definitely an issue for the global economy, not just here in the United States, it is actually, it appears, on the decline.
Not at all what it used to be. And it's only going to continue to get worse. I was getting a massage the other day, and I was kind of surprised at how based the massage therapist was. It was another male. He's like in his 50s, maybe, but he's very active still pretty virile. And he's also based. He's pretty awake, and I was shocked at the places we went during our conversation. But I told him part of my plan, I'm leaving my job. Part of my plan is to withdraw whatever little bit of money I can from my 401k. And I'm going to take a tax hit and like a federal penalty hit. But even doing that, the money right now is worth more than it will be in 40 years when I theoretically retire. Because in 40 years, America is not going to be a thing. Not in the way it is today in any capacity. I really think 40 years is a fair timeline for the shift to occur. It's happening.
So this shift that is happening is just a political realignment that happens here in the United States, every couple decades, when a dominant political party, fades from dominance. Most recently, starting in the 1980s with good old Ronald Reagan, we have the era of neoliberalism. And I mean, ultimately, Joe Biden is like a neoliberal Democrat, so that is what we are still in. And before that, there was like it was New Deal Democrats that had been ushered in by FDR and his decades in office. So really, or his decade in office, I should say. The political realignment that appears to be occurring right now is the shift of the Republican Party towards Trumpism, MAGA Trumpism, whatever you want to call it. But the fact of the matter is, he is leading. He is the leader of that political party, and the leader of the opposing political party is a neoliberal. And we've essentially seen neoliberal politics, like I said, going back to Reagan. And it looks as though this shift is occurring, and it is largely due to the shift in the Republican Party.
Right now, the shift in timelines, essentially. And people there's still an opportunity to get on the right ship, the elevation ship, the consciousness elevation ship. The people who want to love on the planet and love on their community, but from a place of freedom and sovereignty, from voluntary action. Because it's not altruism, it's not compassion, it's not love if it's a forced action. A la the taxation, the social welfare state, which is a fucking joke anyways.
And yeah, it's like kind of, in my opinion, ridiculous to argue that the social welfare state is a bad thing. Like, just listen to the words social welfare. Apparently, that's a bad thing because if you add the word state to the concept, uh, because honestly, like, what's bad about social welfare? But if you, as you have professed many times, have a problem with the state, then maybe the social welfare state is in fact a bad thing, I guess. Uh, and as far as taxation goes, it is voluntary. I currently owe the IRS a lot of money, and I don't really prioritize paying it back, but I will at some point. And really, when it comes down to taxation, it is in an economic sense voluntary. It is not, coercive in any way.
And so the more the global elites feel that they're losing, the more they're going to tighten their grasp. But they have already lost. We're just witnessing what one person called sort of the death gasp, like the last sort of exhale of a dying beast.
Yeah, and so this is the death gasp of capitalism, but you would never admit that.
And from the ashes, from the rubble, we will rebuild. And that's when community truly becomes key. That's when sovereignty truly is given back to us. There's still some battles to be fought yet. The monster is screeching and flailing, but we are going to win. But first, we need to figure out how to stop being wage slaves to the matrix. Because inflation is oppression.
And yeah, so once again, I agree that like manufactured inflation can definitely be oppressive as a concept, but you should, be happy, Andrew, that inflation is in fact down.
Our homelessness crisis, our mental health crisis, our obesity epidemic, all of our crises are the result of evil forces manipulating material reality.
And so all of those crises peaked during the pandemic because it had that effect on a lot of things. But for the most part, those crises are on the decline.
Against the average person in the favor of themselves, the global elite. They use things like the state and like the church to brainwash your mind. But more and more people are waking up, especially as their wallets get hit and they're like, what the fuck is going on? The average American is struggling. And so I was really disappointed that Kyle reached out from the Brothers Blue channel and he, was all nice at first and saying, hey, I really think we can have productive conversation. And I submitted what I thought was the best topic thesis to discuss.
So this is where obviously he mentions me and his side of our most recent interaction, which I intend to make an entire video about because we had a back and forth through email that he's going to, sort of misrepresent here.
And it was that the average American of every gender and race is struggling right now. And the title was actually Crossing the Divide, Healing Our Community. And I had asked him, I said, can you agree on these tenets? That the average American of every race and gender is struggling right now. So that was like the subtopic. The main title was Crossing the Divide because he and I are on much different sides. And his brother and Steven from the BG cast were going to participate. It was going to be like a 2-on-2 sort of conversation. But he couldn't even agree with and acknowledge that point. And it really stuck with me that I'm out here trying to truly help our communities.
And so I'm just going to pause once again during this tirade to explain that this is not at all how this interaction went down. A recent back and forth will have an entire video dedicated to it because in one of his previous videos, he, exclaimed that I should go through our emails and, paint a broader picture and give people the true perspective of, once again, our interaction, our back and forth. And so stay tuned for that video and just please know that this is not really how it went down at all.
And he has no interest in doing that. He wanted to talk about the Great Reset and he wanted to create like a pro and a con why we should accept or reject the Great Reset. Whatever, fuck that. No, I want to talk about healing our communities, about taking back our power, about dismantling the corrupt and evil state, because that is the source of our struggle, the source of our oppression. It is a shared oppression. The average American, regardless of their race and gender, is feeling this. And once we can acknowledge that, and once we can come together with that, that's when we can start making progress. Thank you very much. Long video, over 10 minutes. I apologize. If you watched it all, much love.
All right. And as we will see, in the forthcoming video, going over our recent drama, he in fact brought up the topic of the Great Reset, and I simply tried to expand on that. And that's where, the communication sort of started to break down. And so, once again, just stay tuned for proof of the reality of our most recent interaction. This drama video will be posted hopefully soon enough, where I actually go over the emails and interaction from my side. As always, remember, knowledge is power.